Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 83. Andrew and Jerry roar like lions, because, of course, I'm ginning off of what Tim Scott had to say at the Republican National Convention last night. I'm Andrew Langer.
I'm Jerry Rogers.
And let's dive in, Jerry. I mean, so much has happened since our last show. We're going to get better at doing this now that I'm doing radio 5 days a week. We both have stuff going on. It's been a little tough, but we're going to try to do this now with the new schedule. But since then, we've had an assassination attempt. We had a bad debate performance by Joe Biden and subsequent bad media hits. We had Joe Biden's Lester Holt and Speedy Mormon interviews released yesterday. Tim Scott gets up at the RNC and talks about about how the devil visited Pennsylvania and a lion roared afterwards. And it underscores listen, I'm not someone who talks about miracles very often, and I certainly don't think that Donald Trump is divinely is visiting upon us divinely. On the other hand, one can't help but think that there is a certain degree. Donald Trump is an incredibly lucky guy, to say the least. So I wanted to start there, Jerry. Your thoughts here.
I mean, how lucky is he when you have the media, the Democratic Party, a Republican establishment, fall away Republicans like Michael Steele and Steve Hayes and Jonah Goldberg and others, and when they've spent the better part of 8 years, lawfare, character assassination, labeling him a threat to democracy, a would-be dictator. He is the American version of Hitler, American fascism rising. Even on Friday, the day before the shooting, President Biden was in Michigan or in the Midwest on a campaign stop, and the words he used. In fact, I have Real Clear Policy. I put this up, and I just labeled it Biden in his own words, and it was I mean, the harshness is incredible to me. Let's just listen to this. This is the president of the United States. Yeah. The president. This is Joe Biden, the president. And I know after the Philadelphia Soul of America speech, I want to encourage all our listeners to go to the White House webpage, look up this speech, print it out, and read it. Yeah. The president of the United States labeled half of America violent insurrectionists.
Right.
But this is just from Friday. Like the Philadelphia speech is a year and a half, 2 years ago. This is from Friday. Quote, Trump is even more dangerous now. No, I'm serious. He's unhinged. He's snapped. And he refuses this time around. He refuses this time around to say he'll accept the election. Of this election, the results, he won't accept the results. Can you imagine that? He goes on, look, he says, Trump says, if he loses, there will be a bloodbath when he loses.
Yeah.
And the United States Supreme Court said there's virtually no limit on the power of the president. Trump said if he wins, he'll be a dictator on day one. He means it, folks. Now, let me just say something real quick. Right. I don't want to ramble here, but a couple of things. Number one, Trump never said there'd be a bloodbath.
No.
He was talking specifically about the automakers and what a continued Biden administration would mean to the auto industry.
Right.
It would be a bloodbath, the auto industry. The context was perfectly clear, but the president lies about it.
Right.
And he uses, again, wartime language, bloodbath. When the president said that he would be a would-be dictator, Trump never said that.
No.
Remember, this is about a year ago. Donald Trump, right when the lawfare, the indictment started to kick in, he did a special one-on-one with Sean Hannity. And Sean Hannity asked him, will you tell us right now that you will follow the law, that you will, and he went on this whole thing why Trump has to say affirmative that he will accept the outcome of the election, that he would not be someone to use dictatorship type powers, et cetera, as if the president could use dictator powers. But regardless,
yes.
And Trump's response was, oh, you mean like they're doing against me?
Yeah.
You mean they're doing this against me? You're saying, well, I do it against them. And then he flippantly, he joked, said, well, maybe for a day.
Yeah,
It was, again, the context was they're the dictators, or they're behaving like dictators. They're weaponizing the legal system. They're weaponizing and politicizing January 6th. They're using the legal system, the Department of Justice, to jail their opponents. And lastly, this idea that the Supreme Court has given the president virtually unlimited power, that is a
garbage.
lie. It
Right.
is garbage. So my point is that you hear this every day for years. And don't tell me this doesn't impact people. What do you do with a Nazi? What do you do with a threat?
Right.
What do you do with a madman? What do you do with someone who's recklessly trying to steal your freedom? What do you do? Well, you stop them by any means necessary.
And
So
that's
again, so my
but
point is,
let's
to your
not
question
forget,
though,
as
I don't think he's lucky. I think Donald Trump could, if he was a sane person, would just say, "I don't need this. I don't need this at all."
yeah, but okay, but let me get back to this other stuff, because let's not forget also, Jerry, as the president is talking about insurrectionists,
Yes.
that for the 4 years that Donald Trump was president, remember, the opposition called itself the resistance. There was
Yes.
a series of Star Wars movies that came out in which, not even a thinly veiled allegory, but sort of talking about the heroes being the resistance. That was not coincidental. That was by design. And so when you have a so-called resistance movement to Nazis and fascists, by the way, I'm using air quotes for everybody who's listening, what is shocking is that it didn't happen earlier. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back, because let's not forget that it did happen earlier. Again, tying things together. And you and I talked a little bit about Benny Thompson, and I want to come back to that in a second. But let's not forget that it was in June of 2020 that there was a violent riot, dare I say it, insurrection, in which angry rioters were trying to breach the White House fence, and were attacking the Secret Service and attacking law enforcement that was there. And one can only imagine what would have happened if they breached. I hadn't even said that on the air, Jerry. I need to bring that up.
I want to get back to Benny Thompson too,
Yeah.
but just real quick, as a side note, it's not just Donald Trump, right? What did Chuck Schumer do in front of the Supreme Court, saying that you will feel the whirlwind? You
Right.
won't know what hits you. And then what happens? A would-be assassin goes to Justice Kavanaugh's house.
Right.
The left has engaged in persistent, consistent, violent rhetoric. Now, I understand that Trump says crazy things. I
Right.
understand that we have our Marjorie Taylor Greens. I get that. And the right side isn't 100% innocent. But it's not about innocence versus guilt. It's about the volume.
Yes.
It's from the left.
And
It's constant, and it's
that
part of.
for one, hold on. And that for one side, Jerry, and I meant to say this on the air yesterday, I meant to say it today, and I've got to write it down in bold letters. Let's not forget that for one side of our political equation, violence equals speech and speech equals violence. Right?
Right.
Remember during 2020 and before, right? I talk about how in 2016 I had this conversation with kids at my high school about the issue of what was considered legitimate protest. And remember, there was the justification that rioting and looting are legitimate forms of protest on the part of the left, because it somehow is a form of reparations or reparative activity, which is nonsensical. So when you say we have a resistance, we are resisting our enemies who are fascists and American Nazis, and that violence in the name of this kind of social justice is a legitimate form of speech, the end result is somebody getting up on a rooftop in Pennsylvania and taking a shot at the president of the United
Andrew,
States.
again, just for clarity, Andrew and I aren't saying that we know what this person's motives, what their
No.
motives were. However, it doesn't change the fact, regardless of his motives, the fact is that the left, the media, has allowed this. The Democratic Party,
Absolutely.
Joe Biden, they have gone after their political opponents as if they are enemies of the state.
Right.
And it's Donald Trump, but it's also the Supreme Court. It's the Electoral College. It's whoever stands in the way of their power. And I want to make clear, because I've had lots of discussions over the past several days with journalists, with editors, with news directors, and what I've been told from them is be careful.
Be
Bo-
careful, Jerry.
both sides do this, and
Remember, Jerry,
I
when
want
you
to be
talk about, when you tell the truth about people wearing masks, people might not wear masks.
right. But my point is, and again, and this is a broad array of I've talked to several
Right.
reporters, journalists, those who cover politics for Real Clear. I've talked to some news directors of programs of stations that I'm familiar with. I've talked to on air talent, and I've talked to writers and authors and editors. And the mainstream uh, ethos is both sides do this. Be careful. This is about healing now, not about assigning blame. I dismiss that out of hand
Right.
because no, both sides don't do it in the same manner. They don't
Right.
have the same venues. The attacking of their political opponents as enemies of the state. This is a mainstream part of the left.
Yes.
Yes, the right does it, but it is visceral. It is occasional. It's not part of the
And
strategy.
I say this not as an aside, but one side believes that violence is a form of speech,
Yes,
and that is
and
not
let's be clear,
conservative.
it's the left.
And that, yes, it is the left. It is the left that believes this. And the
And the
converse,
irony
you can speak
there,
to,
Andrew,
yeah.
is when they do, I love watching like a reel on social media and you have Antifa or you have some leftist organization and they're being threatening and they have baseball bats. And you get some MAGA guy who then goes over and pushes them or shoves them or punches them. Then it's like, I can't believe what they fought back.
Yeah.
You
So
can't
again,
believe.
the best example of this is the father in Philadelphia with his
Yes,
12-year-old son. His 12-year-old son is getting harassed by this older gentleman, a very angry and unhinged gentleman. So the
violently
father
in the face of
violently
the
threatening
sun.
his son. So the father goes over and essentially gets the guy out of his son's way. And who is the one who has the SWAT team showing up at his house? It's not the guy who was harassing the 12-year-old boy in front of the abortion clinic. It's the father protecting his
And
son.
it's worse than that. It wasn't the
Yeah,
SWAT team because local authorities in
you're
Pennsylvania
right.
refused to
An
bring
excellent point.
charges. It was
Yes, Biden's
Biden's
it. Yeah.
Department of Justice that went after this guy in the morning over breakfast with 7 children present. The FBI raided his home with weapons drawn.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so
And
don't
again,
tell me this is both sides.
and it's the left, that is now infiltrating the military. I don't know if you've heard this story. I don't remember which. I think it was Fort Bragg. What used to be Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, where the MPs, the military police, and the base security were getting education. Like, I guess they got new personnel on board, and they were being told, they were getting a PowerPoint presentation how to spot potential terrorists. And this is no joke, Jerry. I'm not sure if you've heard this, but one of the possible tells of a possible terrorist is having pro-life license plates on their car.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Okay,
actually happens.
it's so if you're pro-life, if you're a Christian, Orthodox Christian, if you are a Catholic that attends Mass, this is who the Biden
Right.
administration is targeting. Now, again, this is part of a whole, and this begins with, I mean, most recently, it begins with where did this start? It started in two places recently. Number one, it started during the Obama administration, prior to him winning the election and saying his goal is to fundamentally transform America.
Right.
And you saw what Obama did. He weaponized and politicized the DOJ and the IRS.
Yep.
He weaponized government against his political enemies. In fact, my goodness, we don't talk about this enough. It was the Obama Biden administration that was engaging and spying on the Trump campaign, and
Right.
even after Trump won, they were still engaged in nefarious
And
activities trying to get Trump potential
and you know
appointees
something, and
and members.
to bring it back to the issue of the shooting, and I want to spend some time talking about the conspiracy theorists and the false flag, because
Sure.
one of my radio trolls put up an astounding video. in response to something I said. But what gets me, and this gets into the Benny Thompson thing.
And Benny
So
Thompson, of course, is the
chairman of the
congressman
J6 committee. Yeah.
of the illegal J6 committee.
Illegally
Let's
constituted
I want to be
J6
yes,
committee. And we
exactly
now
right.
understand illegally constituted special counsel investigation of Donald Trump into the documents. But my point here is that back in the fall, there was a story that appeared. I don't remember which leftist publication it was. No, I think it was actually Forbes, weirdly enough, essentially saying that folks like Dan Bongino and Tucker Carlson, who are saying that we're heading towards an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, are conspiracy theorists. Peter Strzok, who I don't know why anybody gives this guy a platform. Peter Strzok, for those of you who don't remember, was the FBI agent who, along with Lisa Page, was responsible for that investigation into Donald Trump starting in the summer of 2016 as a quote unquote insurance policy against Donald Trump being elected. Peter Strzok was on TV saying that Donald Trump is under no threat of an assassination attempt, and that essentially it's only dictators who say that there are people out there, paranoid dictators out there, who are saying that people are trying to kill them. Fast forward to the springtime, and you get Benny Thompson, again, the aforementioned chairman of the J6 committee, who introduces legislation to get Donald Trump's Secret Service protection removed from him in the event that he's convicted, not in the event that he is sentenced to prison, but in the event that he is convicted of a felony which could send him to prison, he foregoes. And that bill, by the way, would have gone, or Donald Trump was supposed to have been sentenced late last week. Anyway, my point in all of this is that you have all of these folks who say, on the one hand, it's a bizarre conspiracy theory that Donald Trump might have an assassination attempt against him, A. B, you've got a member of Congress trying to remove Donald Trump's Secret Service protection. And C, you've got folks who even after seeing what happened, they think that it's a false flag operation, that it was all staged, which is just nothing short of mass delusion. Your thoughts?
And again, that's not just the fringe.
Yeah.
On my radio show at WBAL on Sunday, I read tweets from social media influencers with 500,000 plus followers who were saying that this was a false flag operation. Others involved in media, producers and others involved in the media, claiming on social media this was a false flag operation. But it gets worse than that. So the president is shot in the head on a Saturday. Monday, just a couple of days later, you have the opening of the Republican convention.
Yes.
Now, if you watched parts of it or all of it, it was a very working class theme. The ethos was working class Americans, and to me, it was very. It was, in fact, some on the left at Salon or Slate magazine actually said, "Wow, I was surprised at the tone. I was surprised at what I encountered." But that's rare. What most people, and again, check out social media. You have media personalities and influencers writing out. Let me just read one to you. Okay, this
Please.
is from a podcaster. I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to give him advertisement, but a podcaster with 160,000 followers on X, someone who has a newsletter and a Substack. He wrote this. About the opening of the RNC convention on Monday. He writes, "Bone chilling to see at the RNC convention, people chanting fight in unison with one arm punching in the air. Instantly conjures up rallies from 1930s Germany. There is no other way to put it. There are 1,000 other ways to put it.
Right.
Their candidate was just shot in the head, and he bounced up and said, fight, fight, fight.
Right.
This is the instinct of any patriot, the instinct of any man, of any person of valor. If you are knocked down, what does Joe Biden say about his father? If you get knocked down, what do? You get up and fight.
Right.
So the former president gets up and says, fight back. And the left, Michael Steele did this as well today. Michael Steele, former RNC chairperson, said today, he tweeted out today, Donald Trump put on, I guess, Truth Social. I don't know what it is. Is that right?
I don't know.
Well, whatever it is.
Social Getter.
whatever it
Grindr,
is, the
Tumblr,
other
I don't know.
no, stop it. It was on Truth Social. He put
Yeah.
out a statement about the lawfare and the attempts to jail their political opponents. The politicizing J6 and weaponizing J6, all true statements.
Yeah.
And Michael Steele, his response is, there he goes again. This is a madman. This is someone who's dangerous. Again,
Right.
he was shot 2 days ago. And you still can't control yourself. You still can't stop calling him a madman.
And
There's a sickness to it.
well, there really, I mean, you got, and it's mostly, listen, I'm going to say this because it's mostly MSNBC at this point in time. I haven't quite seen that level of vitriol return to CNN yet. But
you had one commentator at CNN say that Trump, his response to being shot only incited more violence.
Well,
It's
yeah,
it's
no, there is
insane.
no, there is that, and then there is that myth that's out there. But as I said, most of it is happening on MSNBC still. I mean, despite the fact that MSNBC took Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski off the air
Which
yesterday.
Andrew, I'm glad you mentioned that. Just
Yeah.
a quick comment on that. Think about how bad the left is in terms of their impacting the political discourse with hate. That the lead program at MSNBC had to be taken off for a day.
Right. Except they've kept on, Nicole Wallace and Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow, et cetera, who are spouting all kinds of stupidity and vitriol.
This
still.
man, Joy Reid, quote, "This man must be stopped."
Right.
Period.
And continuing to say this, I don't have it in front of me, right? The quote that I almost played today on the air. In fact, let me. Well, I'm not going to find it. I don't have time. Time is very much of a premium today. Jerry's got a.
Well, sorry. What do you want to find?
No. It's whatever Joy Reid said yesterday. In reaction, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things. Let me pull it up because I can do this here.
Yeah, this is Eric. While you're looking this up, Eric Swalwell, just from a little while ago. I knew this madman would soon be back.
Yeah,
he's incapable of.
This is what you're. I'm sorry. He's incapable of what?
Of unifying a peanut butter and jelly. For Trump, it's always been about me, me, me. He's a madman. What do you do? The definition of a madman is someone who is a threat, reckless, dangerous, and violent. What do you do against a violent threat?
And Kate Bedingfield, you're on CNN. Kate Bedingfield on CNN says Democrats need to turn their fire on Donald Trump. This is something that she said. She said yesterday.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the Joy Reid quote that I was going to play today was our civilians distrust media, but they don't distrust MSNBC, essentially.
Let me say this too, because this is all political culture. This is all the social order, our political discourse, which is broken, and is broken because of the left and their desire for power, and the media not holding them accountable. That's the problem. If we want to see our discourse get better, the media has to improve. However, let's just talk about ideas and politics just for 1 second, Andrew, because the Dems have a real problem. Because Trump, looks like he is gaining momentum to a victory. By
the way, he looked good last night too.
He looked good. He also there was a certain kind of humility to him yesterday as well.
Yeah.
But however, I want to say two things, Andrew, and I'm talking a lot. I apologize, but
no worries.
Hakeem Jeffries, who's the Democratic leader in the House, posted about a couple hours ago. He said, House Democrats don't simply talk about working class Americans. We are lowering costs to make their lives more affordable. That's in response to how successful the messaging was out of the convention, the Republican convention. But here's my response to that. He's gaslighting. He's absolutely gaslighting, because we have record inflation. We're putting alien migrants over working Americans. We have record high gas prices, energy poverty. Our mutual friend, the president of U.S. Oil and Gas, said that for the first time in history, Americans I'm sorry, how do you phrase it? Energy poverty is rising for the first time. Air conditioning is a luxury good. Grocery prices are 4 times higher. Taxes and regs on small businesses are destroying Main Street, and we have skyrocketing rents and housing costs. So the facts on the ground are such that the Democrats have to go to, he's a madman. He's a threat to democracy.
And let's remember what you and I have talked about over the last few years, right? Here on the show, in which always the knock on the Republicans has been that they don't play the rhetoric game in the same way that the Democrats do.
They don't.
That it's much more civilized, and you and I
Well,
have both at times
Donald
lamented.
Trump does. Donald Trump does
But Donald
go
Trump
into
is right. Donald Trump
Trump
is
speech.
unique, and that's changed the discourse, but it's
Right.
changed the discourse only insofar as it is attempted to bring parity between the two sides,
Right.
right? To put the Republicans even closer to being on par. Remember what we've said. If you think about all of the last, presidential candidates before Donald Trump, and again, this is not Jerry and I have questions about Donald Trump, concerns about Donald Trump. We were agnostic back in. We were certainly agnostic in this campaign, in this primary. We both were supporting other people, and back in 2016 as well. But the difference is that whether it's George W. Bush or John McCain or Mitt Romney or whomever, in terms of pushing back against the lies and being aggressive about it, right? And then, you and I have also posited in the past, well, what would have happened if John McCain had been president of the United States, or Mitt Romney had been president, and any of the folks who ran against Donald Trump in 2016, and what would have happened? Because the Democrats would have taken the same tactics with those presidents.
Sure.
But the question is whether or not they would have just capitulated, or whether or not they would have fought back. Hold on, let me make the final thought here, which is Donald Trump's problem. The problem that the left has with Donald Trump isn't that he's coarse, it's that Donald Trump dishes out and they
pushes
can't take
back.
it. He pushes back.
He pushes back. Listen, they're doing it already. Let me say this.
Because we got to talk about JD Vance for a couple.
Yeah. So JD Vance is now the choice for vice president. He's 39 years old. He's a millennial. This is Donald Trump's strategic play to stamp the Republican Party as the Trumpism party, nationalism, fair trade, America first, borders closed, etc. And that's fine. And we could argue about the specific policy points here, but it is a change in perspective and ideology. And JD Vance, he's a Trump guy, and he's a millennial. This is a future. This is a forward-looking future choice. The problem is, I don't think it helps him get elected. In fact, I think it probably does more harm than good. It is a strategic move, not a tactical move to win the election. I understand Trump wants to stamp the party moving forward, but you have to win an election first. And JD Vance was a mistake.
I don't.
Well, let me just say. Again, even we're seeing it already. Trump got shot on Saturday, and they're still calling him a Nazi. They're still calling. Right. So it doesn't matter. So the fact that he got shot in the head isn't going to help him in any way for this election, except it solidifies his base.
Well, the real calculation is whether or not JD Vance but you're talking about the attacks. I mean, because I thought you were going to go to and talk about the fact that the left has already started attacking Vance. Hold on.
Real quick to that point. Van Jones said last night on CNN that JD Vance is a dangerous virus, more dangerous than Donald Trump.
Right. Well, of course they are. I mean, but the thing is, whoever Donald Trump was going to pick was going to be that. Nikki Haley, if Nikki Haley was picked, they would start.
But the thing with Nikki Haley, though, is that Trump needs to get a sliver of voters who are not with him yet. And JD Vance doesn't do that. Nikki Haley would have.
I think he might. And I listen, I don't think he's the perfect pick. I mean, he's not. As I've said, I thought it was going to be Doug Burgum. I was kind of hoping it was going to be Doug Burgum. But I think that there are certain constituencies in Western Pennsylvania, for instance, where JD Vance will resonate with. And Pennsylvania is a must-get state for Donald Trump. I think some of the traditional, middle of the road Democrats and independents in places like Wisconsin and Michigan, JD Vance can help with.
I think you make a good point, 100% correct. But the problem is that even though he was shot in the head, the media is not going to start calling balls and strikes. And they're going to start with the same vitriol, the same attacks, the same kind of labeling of JD Vance that they did to
But
Trump.
I think in the end,
But
right,
that wouldn't have worked. That wouldn't have
there,
worked with
there's
Nikki Haley. It wouldn't have
no, it
worked
would
with
have
her.
been no, but it would have been a different attack on Nikki Haley. It's not quite the same thing. There have been questions in the past about Nikki Haley's, marital fidelity. Again,
Hey, you and I know a lot of younger people because we have daughters
yeah,
around the same age. By the way, today's Bridget's birthday.
yes,
She
and I
turns
know you got to
24
go.
today. So,
I'm
but I know 20. I'm in the company of 24, 23, 22-year-olds because my kids, their boyfriends and friends, and they're social. And many of them are viscerally. Even Bridget's boyfriend works at AEI, so they're intellectually, intellectual conservatives, but they don't like Donald Trump. And they don't like Donald Trump to the point of they will bullet vote. They will vote
yes.
for Senate or Congress and maybe not vote for president or write someone in. All of them to a person, again, this is anecdotal, but all of them to a person would have considered Trump if Nikki Haley was the running mate.
Sure, and I get that, and she was certainly on my list,
Yeah.
but again, given the history and given whatever, I mean, who knows what's going to happen between now and then in terms of whether or not Nikki Haley will be invited back into the administration. I don't know, but the reality is that every Republican vice presidential candidate is going to get savaged by the press and
Yes.
bloodied. And the question
You're
is,
right.
in the end, the different tactics that are out there, and whether or not JD Vance has a wherewithal, in himself as a former Marine, as a 39-year-old, to be able to withstand and push back on those
Now,
things in the way that President
I
Trump wants.
I have two questions for you.
Yes, sir.
First is JD Vance is untraditional or unorthodox in the sense that he doesn't bring anything. He doesn't bring his state because the state's already a red
Right.
state. Um, Unorthodox in that he's not a fundraising king. So he doesn't bring money. He doesn't bring territorial or regional advantage. So I want
But
to
I
ask you.
I push back on that. I think
Yeah,
he
yeah.
does bring some regional advantage, not in his state, but in other
Okay.
states.
Well, that's a good
Yeah,
point you said about
yeah,
Pennsylvania and
yeah.
other parts of the country that are hard hat working class.
Right.
But the second thing is, and this might be more troublesome, because you can stumble on this and not get up, and that is JD Vance has called Donald Trump Hitler.
Yes. But see, in the end, right? I mean, but the counter to that is, listen, you had Kamala Harris saying that her running mate was a racist at the time.
But then,
People's opinions of
but
what
that's assuming again. You're right on an even playing field where it's fact against fact or situation versus situation. You're right. This is a tit for tat. They cancel each other out. But we know that CNN and MSNBC and New York Times, Washington Post, and all the rest of the venues aren't going to treat it that way.
right. And we also know that this election is going to be won by the candidate that moves the most people in these small little columns from
Yes.
column A to column
It's funny.
B.
Our friend Brian Darling,
Yeah.
he and I do something called the Liberty Update every Sunday on my show, on the Jerry Rogers Show.
Yep.
And he made a brilliant point. Something you've said, you've made this point as well, Andrew, and it's very smart. And that is, this election really is going to be about moving 1,000 voters here, 1,000 voters
Right.
there, in terms of who wins. But let me ask you this: this is not going to be a blowout. This is still going to
No,
be this is still going to be a 270 to 267 electoral college victory for one of them.
I'm not so sure. I
Well,
mean,
that's
I
what I'm
think
asking you.
no, okay, that's what you're asking me, because I've started to run the map again. I don't think
Yeah,
it's going to be a blowout, and it's not going to be 49 states to one state.
sure.
But I think in the end it'll probably be within 30 electoral college votes. Because if Trump wins Pennsylvania,
Okay,
and
let me give you the states. You tell me you tell me who you think wins the state.
yeah,
Given everything, JD Vance, given the shooting, Arizona,
Trump,
New Hampshire,
uh, isn't New Hampshire's not divided, right? That's Maine. Biden wins New Hampshire.
okay, Wisconsin,
Biden wins Wisconsin.
okay, Michigan,
No, I'm sorry. Trump wins Wisconsin. No, Biden wins Wisconsin. Michigan, Trump wins Michigan.
Did I say North Carolina yet?
You have not said North Carolina. Trump
North
wins North
Carolina.
Carolina.
Georgia.
Trump wins Georgia.
Okay. Nevada.
Trump wins Nevada.
Arizona.
You said Arizona already, and I said Trump wins Arizona.
Okay. I mean, well, if that's the case,
Yeah.
if he wins Wisconsin or Michigan, Pennsylvania.
And Pennsylvania, that is the tough one. Right now, I'm going to say Trump's going to win it, but I just don't know.
All right. So, given what you just said, if Trump wins Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Virginia,
Biden wins.
Okay.
Virginia.
All right. That's fine. But if Trump wins either Wisconsin or Michigan, wins Pennsylvania, wins Georgia and North Carolina, and wins Arizona, I think he's the next president of the United States.
Right. Because in the end, because that's what there's a website, Jerry, and I think you would love it. It's
Yes, I go. Real Clear
And-
Politics, and you could do your own. Hey, folks who are listening, go to Real Clear Politics. Go to the Battleground State or Electoral College,
we'll pull it up.
and you can make your own map.
You can make your own map.
I get lost like for an hour sometimes doing that.
And I did this because I think, listen, if you sounded I was unsure in my voice, Arizona's one that I'm not sure about.
What about Nevada?
No, you said Nevada. I think
I know. I forgot what you said though.
Trump wins Nevada.
That's huge if he wins Nevada.
Right. And that's just it. But I think again, it's the changing face of all this. Jerry,
I know we got to go, but I'm asking. I have to ask you this.
Yeah.
Given JD Vance, given these battleground states, and your predictions or your analysis right now in terms of who Trump might win here, lose there, who takes the Senate?
Well, I think Republicans retake the Senate.
Okay, and what about the House?
And I think Republicans have a couple of gains of a couple of seats in the House.
All right, my last question, and then we can say goodbye. A poll just came out in the state of Maryland, and Larry Hogan, the Republican candidate, has a significant lead over the Democrat Angela Osselbrooks. Do you think the Democrats lose the deep blue state? So blue.
How much of a lead? Because last I was seeing, he was down by double digits.
He was done. He was. There have been two polls.
Which poll is this?
All right, the first poll was done during the primary.
Yeah,
and it had so the main poll was also Brooks versus her opponents in the primary, but they did sub polling that showed also Brooks was 10 points ahead of 10 points ahead of
Larry
Hogan. You're going to have to Google who did the poll. Right. But it's significant polling because it's been reported by Maryland Matters, WBAL. So it's a mainstream poll that came out this past week that has him up almost 10 points over also Brooks.
I need to know.
You're shocked by that.
I need to see who the pollster is, because if it's Malaya Cromer at Goucher, I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously than if it's not.
I know it's not
the other guy.
I'm pretty sure it's not Cromer.
The other guy, or if it's.
Well, I tell you what.
I tell you, hold on. If the guys down at St. Mary's also, I would take that.
Filibuster a bit, and I'll get the poll.
No. All right. Well, you can get the poll. So, folks, I am going to bluster as sort of a closing up here. For those of you who don't know, I have Jerry still does obviously his Sunday show on WBAO. You should go check that out, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. every Sunday. I have been tapped by the good folks at WCBM to do 5 days a week for them as a limited run series until the election. There's somebody who's actually, I can say this here because it's not on the air. Kim Klacik won her primary in Maryland too, and so she can't be on the air daily on WCBM. So while she's running for Congress, depending on what happens there, I am on 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. On WCBM every weekday, AM 680 in Baltimore. Go and check that out. Jerry, yes.
I can't. I'm sorry. I don't have enough time to find it here.
No worries.
Oh, no. Here it is. Here it is. No, it's not. I can't find it.
Never mind.
I apologize. I tell you what, I'll put it up on the Jerry Rogers or Andrew will put it up at the Andrew show page. Hey, I want to say this though.
Please.
I want an answer from you first, even though you don't know the poll source. All the mainstream and all the left of center, right of center outlets in Maryland is reporting that the most recent poll has Hogan up with a significant lead in Maryland.
I don't buy it.
You don't buy it. So you don't think Hogan's going to win?
I don't think Hogan's going to win. I think what's going to happen is that the Democrat vote in Maryland is going to be so strong unless they're just so depressed and despondent that they hang out. But I think this race is important enough to them. And also,
Okay,
Brooks is going to, right? If it looks like Donald Trump is going to win the general election, the also Brooks voters are going to come out and they're going to vote just because they want to make sure that
good point.
that's not a Republican vote in the Senate.
And I just want to say this too. I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to listen to Andrew Langer during the day. Everyone knows who listens to this podcast. I'm a fan. In fact, how I entered into talk radio more recently, I had a talk show, a cup of
Many
coffee
moons
in
ago,
in
yes.
New York City 20 years ago. But I'm involved in talk radio today because Andrew Langer brought
Thank
me
you.
in. I'm a talk show junkie. There is no better talk radio than listen to Andrew's show. It's great fun. It's informative. It's exactly what
Thank you,
talk radio
Jerry.
should be. In fact, I would recommend that if folks are listening and not driving, they should have a little notebook and a pencil and just write down things. I used to do that. When I was a kid listening to New York City
Sure.
talk radio, I had a little brown. My father used to give me from the Transit Authority these little brown notepads.
Oh
And
yeah.
when I would hear something, I'd be like, oh, I got to check this out or check that out.
It's the kind of thing I used to keep in my car to keep track of my gas mileage.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Jerry.
And I also just to let you know, I have also been inundated with friends of ours saying woohoo, Andrew, 5 days a week. So this is good news.
I'm going to tell a quick story today, because our one of we have a listener. I don't know if actually I don't know if she's one of your listeners, but she invariably emails me before the show to remind
Andrew,
me, right?
I have the most listened to radio talk show in the state, so I'm
Oh yes,
sure
that I
I'm
well
sure
listen.
she's
We
one of
know.
my
Listen,
listeners.
we all know who is absolutely glued to your show every Sunday. His initials are WM, and he may be his name may rhyme with less snore. So yes, I don't have less snore listening to my show. But anyway, reminding me to pray. And this morning, when I didn't get that until late and didn't pray before I went on the air, we had a bit of a technical snafu. So
Oh well.
it happens. So Jerry, Sunday, what do you want folks to do?
Well, every day I want folks to well listen to WBAL 7 to 10 Jerry Rogers Show. It is the most important Sunday talk show you'll listen to. And the fact of the
I'll
matter
buy
is,
that.
we talk about things in a way that other talk shows do not, and you're going to hear the truth, plain and simple. You're going to hear the truth, and again, that's the theme of the show. That's my ethos: find the truth, plant your feet, stand firm.
And for me, the ethos of our show, five days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Stand up, speak out, be heard.
I love
Have a
it.
great week, everybody, and please stay safe.